Today we're going to be talking about camera gear and specifically about what I believe is an ideal beginner documentary camera kit. But before we jump into the video, I have to set up because let me just show you our room. So we live in Bali, and because we don't have a dedicated working space, we have to work from our room. So this is our room. You can see two work tables. The one on the left is Laura's, the one on the right is mine. And here in this box there's the camera kit that I'm going to be talking about today. So we live in a world where filmmaking gear is extremely accessible and there's so many options on the market. Great, right? Well, it is, but from my experience, it can also be limiting sometimes. Let me explain why. As filmmakers, we all want to make films. But what can sometimes happen, and it was definitely happening to me in the early years of my journey, is that we start believing that if we would have this camera, or if we would have this lens or this piece of equipment, then we could go and we could really make that film that we want to make. And as you can imagine, this false belief that we need more equipment and better equipment can often stop us from making films. I believe that you can create a film with an iPhone these days. The quality is incredible. But I also believe that there's something beautiful on using a camera. In the end, the cameras and the camera gear are the tools of us filmmakers. Not the only tools, but they are the physical tools that we use to create films. And so the question becomes, how little or how much equipment do you actually need? Well, let me show you what in my opinion is a minimal viable documentary camera kit, which allows you to have all the necessary tools to make a documentary without compromising on quality. So first thing first, you need a camera or a camera body. This is my trusty Lumix S1, which I've been using for the past few years, but it doesn't really matter on the brand. Any camera that can shoot 4K, 25 frames per second and ideally 10-bit will do. And there's so many options on the market these days. You know, Sony has some great cameras, Lumix just released some amazing cameras, Canon has great cameras. So it's really up to you what type of system you like to use. Together with the camera, you will of course need some media, so SD cards or whatever media the camera uses, and batteries. I would say having at least 3 to 4 batteries is great, because then you can almost certainly run a full day with those 4 batteries. Now, as we were talking about the camera, I would also suggest you to get a cage. A cage for the camera basically allows you to attach different accessories to the camera body, and it also serves as a protection for the camera. Plus, if the cage is nice, it can also help you with the grip of the camera. Now, the third piece of equipment you will need is a lens. I would say that for documentary shooting, and especially if you're a beginner, a zoom lens, something like 24 to 70 or even 16 to 35 if you really like to go wide, are great choices. The zoom lens definitely allows you to be more flexible when shooting, because you can shoot wide shots, you can shoot close-ups and sometimes even extreme close-ups. Maybe it's not gonna be so characteristic as having a prime lens or vintage lenses, but it's definitely good all-around choice. And I would say that a good quality zoom lens will cover 70% of your shoots, especially if you're a beginner documentary filmmaker. Again, there's so many brands on the market, whether you're going for native lenses for Sony or Canon lenses for Canon, or you can go for third-party manufacturers like Sigma, Tamron, and there's plenty more on the market. Now, next thing you will definitely need is a variable ND filter. This basically works as sunglasses for your lens, and it allows you to control exposure without changing the camera settings. This is extremely important when you're shooting video, because it allows you to keep your shutter speed or shutter angle on the correct settings to get the most filmic looking motion blur. If I use my ND filter on the main camera, you see how the brightness is changing without me actually changing the camera settings. Again, there's plenty of brands on the market. I heard the Nisi ND filters are really good. This is a Peter McKinnon Polar Pro ND filter, also really good. And there's a few others, but do your research, and depending on your budget, you can decide which one to go for. The next piece of equipment you will definitely need for documentary is some sort of audio solution. You could either go with a directional shotgun mic. This is the Rode Wireless No, this is the Rode NTG Video Mic Pro. It's very directional, so usually you need to be in front of your character, but it's a great overall mic. You can use it for interviews, you can use it for run and gun shooting, and many other scenarios. Another option would be to get a lav mic. This is basically a mic that you can clip onto your subject, either with a cable and clip it under the t-shirt, or with the Rode Wireless Go mics, you can clip them straight away. But make sure that you can't see the mics when you're filming, otherwise it will just look like a reportage. Now, ideally, you would get both. Ideally, you would get lav mics and boom mics, and depending on the scenario, you would be switching between them, or you would be using them both at the same time. That is unfortunately not possible with all mirrorless cameras, but if you have, for example, FX3 or FX30, then the top handle actually allows you to plug in multiple microphones. I think Canon C70 can do the same, and for Lumix cameras you can get adapter that basically goes into the hot shoe on the camera. Next item I would suggest you to get would be some sort of top handle. This attaches straight on top of the camera, and it basically allows you to hold the camera like this, let the weight of the camera and the gravity work, which then allows you to get more stable shots and also much better grip on the camera. With the top handle, I would also get a monitor. External monitors are great because they allow you to see what you're filming on a much bigger screen than the typical camera monitor. So something like a 5-inch monitor, again, there's plenty of brands on the market. Small HDs are really good. This is a Holy Land monitor that I got sent to me. I also like Portkeys. There's Atomos monitors that allow you to record ProRes. So again, so many different options on the market. And some of the great features that the monitors allows you to use are false colors, peaking, there's waveforms, there's vectorscopes, you can upload your own LUTs, and so on and so forth. So without a doubt, a good monitor will pay back. And the last but not least, you will need a tripod, because what is this sound? We have construction workers next to our house and they just started drilling. And the last but not least, you will need a tripod, because if you're gonna be filming a documentary, there's, I would say, a 95% chance that you will have to film interviews, and it's very difficult to film interviews if you don't have a tripod, especially if you're a one-man crew. So get a good quality tripod. Again, there's so many tripods on the market, and it really depends on your style of shooting. If you're traveling a lot, you know, maybe hiking and going remote places, you probably want to have a tripod that is a little lighter. If you're shooting on bigger productions and you know that you're not going to be moving too much, you can get something a little heavier that also has a bigger capacity. And so if you build that minimal viable documentary kit up, it could look something like this. It looks professional. You have all the tools that you need to make a documentary, and at the same time, it's not too much equipment that you actually need to get. Now, once you have something like this, there's no excuses, and there shouldn't be any limitation. You can shoot short documentaries with this, you could shoot a branded content piece with this, you could shoot a music video with this. As I said, no excuses, go out and shoot. If there's two more things that I would recommend you, they're not necessary, but they're extremely useful, then it's a 5-in-1 reflector, which allows you to bounce light, use it as a negative fill, use it to soften light. It's super cheap and it's super useful. And then some sort of a small light. I like to use this Aperture MC11, but it's quite an old light. I know that there's many more lights these days. I think Zhiyun has released some small powerful lights. Nanlite is making great lights. So anything that is bicolor or ideally RGB allows you to give a little bit of a mood to certain scenarios and certain scenes. So a small light like this is especially good for run and gun documentary filmmaking. Now, having a right kit is of course important, but it's not everything. Apart from equipment, there's also a lot of know-how that goes into documentary filmmaking. And if you would want to learn more about that, then I suggest you to check this video right here, which is exactly about that, about the know-how, and I think it will be very useful for you. That's it for today, guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below, and I'll see you next Tuesday with the new video. Peace.